Pause the video before I hit the pothole. Were you able to do it? Did you respond fast enough? Because that's about how much time I had to respond when it came to FSD slowly and gently drifting off-road at the worst possible moment. But yes, ultimately, at the end of the day, I am responsible for the car. That's what you agree to when you sign up for full self-driving. As ticked off as I was in the situation, there's no amount of explaining or defending I could say that would make Tesla responsible for these damages. They've covered themselves legally, and ultimately it was my fault for trusting the system in a situation where I shouldn't have trusted it. The frustrating part about this whole situation, aside from the Tesla community kind of dogpiling me for getting upset at how the system performed, is all the relentless comments saying you should have been paying attention. And I just want you guys to imagine yourselves in my situation for a moment. Picture this: you were paying attention, your hands are on the wheel, your eyes are on the road, but then the sun starts shining in your eyes at the absolute worst moment, and you have literally a split second to realize that the car has decided to take somebody's driveway as more drivable space. Now, again, I take full responsibility for the accident. I had to pay for the repairs out of pocket. Very frustrating situation, but that does not necessarily make FSD innocent. It's a sucky situation, and like a lot of sucky situations, there's a bunch of variables at play. Yes, the city should have focused harder on potholes. If there was no pothole, this situation could have been avoided, but in my opinion, that still does not resolve the actual problem here, which I think is at least partially to blame on full self-driving not being able to stay focused on the road. Yes, that doesn't mean that I don't have to pay attention, but like I said, I was paying attention, but I think we should also get serious and human for a moment and realize there are situations in which the car in self-driving modes may put you in a really bad predicament where you don't have enough time to react, even if you are paying attention. I just think it's worth mentioning for today's video that I've never once hit a pothole and damaged my rim or tires. This is the first time it's ever happened. Also happened to be while I was on full self-driving. Is that just a pure coincidence? My family was in the car, and they can all testify in court if we need to that I was paying attention. My hands were on the wheel, my eyes were on the road, but there are lots of things on the road that you can be looking at simultaneously. Not to mention you have mirrors in your car, and it usually takes a split second or a glance to check your side mirrors, check your rear view mirrors, see who's behind you. Also, we have these things in our cars called speedometers and infotainment, and sometimes it takes a split second for you to check your speed, or what is the speed limit in this area. And if your eyes are paying attention to the mirrors, your surroundings, or the instrument cluster in your vehicle, Tesla or not, there are certain things the car could do at the worst possible second, which yes, Tesla does warn us about, and this is one of those situations that I see as an edge case, absolutely. Keep in mind, I drove over 3,000 miles with full self-driving beta, and also not to brag or anything, but never once, not a single time in over 3,000 miles of FSD driving have I ever received a strike, okay? So all the people who are just assuming Drew's a reckless driver, he wasn't paying attention, wouldn't I have been locked out by FSD by now if I overly trusted the system all the time and I didn't pay attention while it was active? Even some of your favorite FSD YouTubers have received 1 or 2 strikes, and I've never received a single one. And while yes, I did sign up to be a beta tester, and while I was paying attention, it is still technically possible for the car to drift off at the worst possible moment and cause severe damage to the car or potentially others out there, which is why I just want to say in today's testing of FSD, where Tesla is actively rolling out the next version that allows your hands to be off the steering wheel, again, giving you even less time to react, these are the kinds of edge cases that may not be super easy to find. Like I said, this exact same stretch of road I had used FSD on before, and the frustrating part to me about the whole community's response to this incident is that we've kind of structured full self-driving in a way for a lot of people that it can do no wrong, because when it does something really cool, and we've seen tons of YouTubers test full self-driving off-road, where it's driving on gravel roads or driving in places where the lane markings are not very accurate, and we brag about how it performs. We're like, look, it found a way through this situation. In fact, mere seconds before I actually hit this pothole, I was showing off how well full self-driving had performed in a construction zone. Obviously, my family was not that impressed after it briefly drifted off-road and hit this pothole in the worst possible moment, but minutes before that, I was showing off how it can follow the cones, even if the cones direct you over the double yellow line. I had done this multiple times, and FSD consistently does very impressive things, and the vast majority of the time is much safer than a human driving themselves. But because of that continued growth, and because it's getting better and better, and we're now seeing Tesla start to say, okay, you know what, maybe you can take your hands off the wheel. This is where it's actually in arguably its most dangerous state, because it will perform very, very well in certain circumstances, but then in my opinion, it's probably because it was just the wrong time of day and the sunlight hit the camera in the absolute worst way possible that it actually ended up drifting off the road in a place that it never drifted off the road before. It's people like me that are probably going to have to front the bill and pay the sacrifice of having to delay my trip, because this happened just a couple of days before we were headed home. My family had to walk because, of course, Teslas don't have spare tires, so we weren't able to leave the situation. I had to wait on the side of the road for the tow truck to appear. And by the way, I watched probably dozens, if not hundreds of cars drive by the exact same stretch of road where this pothole was, and not a single one of them hit the pothole, and they didn't stretch over the double yellow line. Yes, the lane markings were not great, of course, but like I said, when FSD does something cool, we all boast about it and say, look, I'm not doing anything, the car did all of the driving, it did that heavy lifting. But then if the car does something bad, we immediately shift the credit to, oh, well, the driver was screwing up, the driver must have not been paying attention. And what I feel like I've just experienced firsthand is that you can be paying attention and still be put in a situation where you don't have enough time to react. It's especially not helpful, of course, if the sun is shining in your eyes or the cameras of the vehicle, but ultimately remember this: if a robotaxi continues to run on this type of code where it thinks that gravel driveway is technically drivable space and there's not much you can do about the sunshine hitting the cameras a certain way, if I was in a robotaxi, it probably would have made the exact same mistake. It would have drifted off a bit because it thought there was more drivable space on the road, hit the pothole, and then left me stranded. And then if I would have summoned another robotaxi, that replacement robotaxi would have made the exact same mistake. And this is a huge problem that I see with the future rollout of full self-driving without Tesla actually fundamentally changing the way the code interprets its surroundings. In my opinion, I understand that Teslas and full self-driving are not currently designed to detect potholes. Despite what Elon said like 4 years ago, no, that's not part of the feature suite, and the driver is responsible for catching things like that. I am still responsible. I understand this was my fault, my mistake. I should have reacted faster, but there are certain situations where it feels almost impossible to react fast enough when the margin for error is this slim, and that comes up in driving circumstances quite a bit. Sometimes if the car makes a mistake at the absolute worst moment, there's not much you could do, and you could still be paying attention. You could be focused on the horizon ahead of you and not on the pothole right off to the side of the street. You could be checking your speed, you could be checking your mirrors for that split second. But in my opinion, it's quite important for Tesla to pay attention to these mistakes that even people with relatively fast response times like me are still not able to catch. Imagine what it's going to be like when people much older than me, or people that can't check their surroundings as quickly as a younger person, is starting to test out this software. Remember, just a month or two ago, Tesla was sending out full self-driving supervised to every Tesla, including pop-ups on the screen encouraging people to try it out themselves. And I don't think it's a healthy narrative for us to just say, wow, look how impressive it is when it does something right, but then as soon as it does something wrong, we go, oh, well, that's the driver's fault. Like, legally, I understand, yes, the driver is still responsible for everything the vehicle does, but at the end of the day, I still feel like that doesn't make FSD flawless. That doesn't make FSD perfect, and I'm absolutely gonna be a lot more careful moving forward. In fact, after this last road trip I've had with it, I mostly just turn it off unless I'm on the highway, because even the amount of time it takes to disengage the steering wheel, you know, it provides a little bit of resistance. That kind of quick response time that you need to have when you're driving down the road, especially late at night or in situations where you're coming in on a curve or the sunshine is hitting you in the worst way possible, I really don't honestly feel like you have enough time to react. And the way I think Tesla should actually change the code that could have avoided this situation if it was taught the way I was taught how to drive, which is that your position on the road should be purely based on where the center line is. And the car can see the center line, even though it's not the most accurately painted line. It was going straight on this road for plenty of time leading up to the pothole. The problem is both Autopilot and FSD, the old code and the new code, is designed to try to keep you centered in the lane, so it's constantly looking for the line off to the right. And when you drive in situations where that right line is not too visible, this is what results in it drifting off into the right, into lanes that it shouldn't have, or taking up more space on the road than it should have. When I was taught to drive, you were supposed to just stay 2 to 3 feet away from the center line and not even worry what's going on with the right line. Unless, of course, there's some car stretching over the double yellow, then of course it makes sense to move over, but for the most part, your positioning on the road should be entirely based on that center line, whereas because Tesla designed the software in a way to try to keep the vehicle centered between two lines, that's what results in it drifting off to the side, and many other people have reported similar instances with curb rash or rim damage or potholes that ordinarily nobody hit. Like I said, I watched dozens of cars go by this exact same stretch of road without bleeding over the double yellow line, and cars much bigger than mine, like of course the tow truck and SUVs and pickup trucks, they just stayed on the center of the road and they didn't hit this pothole. But because the Tesla saw, oh, there's a non-grassy section, I need to try to stay centered on the lane, that's where I think there's a very critical flaw, and had the code been designed differently, I wouldn't be having to pay for new rims and new tires, and I wouldn't have been stranded and forced my family to basically have to walk home. So again, my mistake, absolutely, legally, I am still very responsible, I accept that, but my point is, yes, while I was at fault, the fault was trusting the system. In my opinion, the fault was not from a lack of paying attention, because in these types of situations, you could be paying attention and still not have enough time to fix the error. So I'm not blaming Tesla for not baking in the code for potholes, because I know they haven't been trying to tackle that yet, but Tesla has been pretty focused and pretty proud of the way full self-driving can stay on the road, and they want you to be able to use it in all kinds of different circumstances, and this is one where I'm paying quite dearly for it, and I feel very stupid. Everybody calling me a moron and an idiot. Yes, you're right. Shouldn't have used it in a situation where the lane markings weren't as clear. It's obvious to me now that was a mistake, and I shouldn't have trusted it even though it went through those exact same roads very consistently and reliably in the past. I should have acknowledged that because the sun is lower, the cameras probably can't see as well, and I shouldn't have used it in that circumstance. You're absolutely right. I'm gonna be much, much more careful with it moving forward, because I'm literally paying out of pocket for these mistakes now, which sucks. But I'm sure many of you disagree with me, so feel free to dislike this video and comment why I'm an idiot down below. That's fine. And thank you to everybody who's left still supporting this channel. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.